So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, depending on where you are across the globe. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Rachel Bevan, so I'm the Director of Statistics Division for ESCAP, and I've got the privilege of starting off this Stats Cafe session today. So this is our second Stats Cafe of 2022, and today we're going to be looking at the topic of data dissemination. So let me just do a quick few housekeeping rules. Firstly, can I ask everyone to make sure when they're not speaking that they're on mute? And then if you are speaking, then obviously unmute yourself. Great that the speakers keep their cameras on. That's fantastic. Makes me feel like we're a bit more together. So thank you for that. For participants, please do also post any questions and comments that you have in the chat. That's really helpful for us. And we hope that we should have time at the end of the way we planned it, so we can come to those questions. But even if we don't have time during the session, we can make sure we look at those afterwards. Also, please note that we are also recording the session. That means that other people can watch it back afterwards, and we'll also make sure that the presentations are available afterwards as well. So just to know that as well. So as I said, today we're going to look at innovations in data dissemination, particularly in the Asia-Pacific region. And we all know absolutely that data and producing data is important, but we also know that's only just the start of the process, and getting data actually used by policymakers in decision making is what really matters, and also how we engage with citizens to make sure that they use the data and that they can hold governments to account is also really important. In 2016, the FAIR Guiding Principles for Scientific Data Management and Stewardship were published in Scientific Data. And in that, they actually produced some guidelines, and that really kind of looked at these, what they were calling FAIR principles. So that was around the fact that data should be, it's not just produced, but it should be findable. That's the F. A, it should be accessible, I, interoperable, and R, it should be able to be reused. So those are really important principles in everything that we're talking about. I think the other important thing with those principles is they also emphasize the importance of the role of technology and the important role that technology can actually play in terms of data dissemination. Technology can really help us in terms of making sure that that data can be found, that it can be accessible. It particularly also helps in terms of making sure that data is interoperable, that we can use data from lots of different systems together, and also that we can reuse data. And the other thing as well that technology means is that we don't need to rely so much on human intervention. And that also helps us enormously, particularly kind of with the increasing volume and complexity and speed at which data is being produced. So today we are going to hear, first of all, from Paris 21 about data dissemination in the digital age. So we've got Rajiv Ranjan, who's the innovation team lead at Paris 21. And then we've got Eric Swanson, a very familiar face to lots of us, who's the Director of Research and the co-founder of Open Data Watch. Then we're going to move on to hearing a bit more about data portals in this region for the Asia Pacific. So we've got Dayan Shayani, and at that point I'm going to pass over him to manage the rest of the session. But after he speaks, we're also then going to hear from countries themselves about what they've been doing, and then we will finish at the end with a bit of time for question and answer and discussion. So hopefully technology can really help us in terms of know where we're heading. At this point then, I'd like to hand over to Paris 21 and to Rajiv Ranjan to tell us a bit more about data dissemination in the digital age. Thanks so much.
Thanks, Rachel, and hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here in this second edition of Stats Cafe.
That it can be accessible.
We have made a slight change in the order, so I'll let Eric Swanson introduce the study that we jointly did in 2019-2020 period on data portals of IDA countries. and then I'll come in with some main insights and the recommendations that the paper proposes before we delve into the Asia-Pacific specific issues that have been researched based on the data sets that we had. So before I let Eric take the stage, let me share the slides, and then Eric, over to you. Yes. Eric, you can see the screen?
I can see the screen, and of course I have to remember to unmute myself. Thank you.
Yeah.
So this was a study that we undertook jointly, Paris 21 and Open Data Watch. We were particularly interested in the dissemination of aggregate data or indicator level data. So we did not cover microdata, we did not cover geospatial data platforms in this. We were interested in what we call data portals, which distinguish it a little bit from, say, dashboards or other kinds of ways of conveying data. These are more systematic ways of disseminating large quantities of data. And in doing so, we drew upon the UN Statistics Division's recently promulgated set of principles and guidelines
and complexity and speed at which
platforms, which were particularly concerned with the dissemination of the SDGs. In total, we looked at 74 IDA eligible countries, of which 18 are from the Asia and Pacific region. And in those 18 countries, we found 23 portals that met our criteria for inclusion in the study. The period of the study covered from, as Rajiv told you, from December 2019 to September 2020. And during that time, we undertook to fairly systematically evaluate the portals on the criteria.
First of all, from Paris 20.
These principles and guidelines. I should add that this was also a chance for us to evaluate the principles and guidelines themselves to see how readily they could be used as an evaluation tool. Go ahead, Rajiv, to the next slide. So the reason we're interested in this and the reason we're having this Stats Cafe today is that data portals are becoming a very important way of disseminating official data in the digital age. And I should add, from my point of view, as a way of making data open, or as Rachel said, to adhere to the FAIR principles. So they're a critical link between producers and users of data. And yet we still find that a third of the IDA eligible countries, those 74 countries we looked at, have no effective data portal at all. We know that data portals need to be designed and implemented in a sustainable manner, and that was one of the things we wanted to look at. So not just a one-off, throw up some data on a website and walk away and forget it. Can they be maintained? The reason for the UNSD principles and guidelines was precisely to try to promulgate a set of standard approaches to this that would be guides to national statistics offices and others in setting up those portals. And as I just said a moment ago, our own report is an attempt to evaluate those principles and guidelines and then to propose a method for evaluating data portals and to offer recommendations for improving their use and function. I won't jump ahead to the findings, but I think I can tell you now, and as a lead into what Rajiv is going to tell you, that there are increasingly more and more data portals out there, or websites that proclaim themselves to be data portals, but their quality and their functioning are very uneven. And while there's still no internationally agreed framework for designing and evaluating data portals, the UNSD's principles and guidelines are certainly an important starting point. So with that, let me ask Rajiv to take over the narration and give you a glimpse of the findings.
Thanks, Eric. This was really useful to set the context and why we are bothered about data portals. I mean, not only it is becoming a standard interface for sharing data and letting users access data through it, it is also creating an important role in the um, value chain of how data is produced and used for policy making. To illustrate that, I have this slide to show the virtuous data cycle. Um, and you can see how uh, the access leads to demand. So if the data is available easily through these portals and they are used for decision making, they also lead to more investments in data. They create demand for data, and the whole uh, cycle get a boost in terms of uh, different role that data plays in our lives. So this is something that uh, brings us back to the why we need to study data portals and why now. Why now is answered with the digitalization work that we all are engaging with because many national statistical offices have expressed the need to um, modernize their dissemination systems, but without looking at the upstream processes, which then results into data production. They are facing challenges, and that's why this study is important at this point in time. So the findings quickly, and these are global findings. They are out of all 74 IDA countries that we studied. This lists all the guidelines, 15 guidelines that we have taken from UNSD guidelines and principles. And you see the guidelines are mentioned in the first two columns, and then the results and the implementation are shown on the extreme right side of the column, the last column. And you see how national ownership is in color red, which essentially means that this is one guideline which we saw uh, the adherence to be the minimum out of all 74 countries that we studied. Um, and this means that many national statistical offices are using data portals developed by external agencies, mostly development partners, but also their ownership on how they manage their data is also not visible through their data portals, such as through the About Us page on many of these data portals. Many of these guidelines that you see here are not easy to assess through desk research, and therefore in the report we do mention that there are possibilities of improving further this exercise by doing deep dives under each guidelines to different countries' infrastructures. But as you can see, collaboration, for example, is something that is difficult to assess how collaboratively the websites have been or data portals have been developed through desk research.
Paris 21 and to Rajiv.
A point that I want to highlight is that not all is to say bad news. There are some good practices also which are really promising. For example, the availability of data in disaggregated format, the last point in this slide 6, is very high. Many data portals that we studied, 78 data portals to be exact, are very strong in terms of how the data is disseminated in a disaggregated manner. Also, the communication side had quite a lot of interesting features. And those are some aspects that we wanted to highlight, saying that the strengths are also found, not only weaknesses in many of the data portals. Here are the remaining guidelines, and there are many important lessons to be learned here. For example, metadata, number 10. 90% of data portals are missing all metadata. Now, this is important consideration because the reusability of data, as Rachel was saying, is dependent quite a lot in how data is explained. So are data portals containing such information which allows the users to understand the data and reuse them is something quite important. Though we do see that it is not in red, it is in yellow, which means that moderately this is implemented almost in all the data portals that we studied. So quickly going to the recommendations. We have a short list in the paper. I will also post the link in the chat for the report. But main recommendation is to go back to the basic. What is important is to enable use of data. And what can be the quick wins are improving the metadata availability, multilingualism, and better interfaces such as drop downs and machine readable data, instead of going for features which are highly technical and maybe used for machine to machine transfer of data. Second recommendation is that when these data portals are designed, they must be done in keeping with the fact that users are the center of any design of products. And it's not only the external users of the data portal, but also the users of data portals in NSOs, in National Statistical Offices. They must find it easy to use, update it regularly, and also it must make their work less burdensome. Third recommendation is to advance national ownership of data portals. So what kind of criteria must be out there for making the choice of national data portals easy for countries, depending on different situations they are in terms of infrastructure readiness, in terms of skills and capacity development. Number 4 is to improve upstream data management practices. It is very important to understand that data portal in isolation should not be the solution which would give the kind of transformation that we are looking for in national statistical offices in the age of digitalization. Data dissemination portals are just one part of the big cycle. And therefore, it is important that upstream data management practices must be improved. How data is classified, how they are maintained and managed in terms of metadata updates and observation value updates, how they are modeled in the database, they are important factors to consider. The fifth one is the streamlining of data dissemination process. And this is why it is important, because of multiplicity of data portals right now. And what is happening is that without changing the work behind these data portals, the streamlining, the return on investment of data portals is not getting realized. So for one indicators, currently the situation is that one needs to update many data portals because there are multiple data portals maintained simultaneously in many of the countries that we studied. So I'll stop here now. I know we have not so much time to go into the details, but I'll share the link in the chat for the paper, and then you can go through them at your own ease.
Thank you so much, Rajiv and Eric, for your presentation. It was very insightful. I particularly liked the part of the virtual cycle where improvements in the data portals can lead to an overall improvement on the whole production and dissemination of statistics. And the findings are also very important for us to take into account and to know that sorry, that there is a lot that we can do to improve data portals, specifically in the Asia-Pacific region. I have a presentation now for you. Let me share my screen just a moment. Okay, here we go. So I'll present basically 3 parts presentation, hopefully very quick and very informative, I hope. I'll first talk a bit about some distinctions that sometimes we get confused about data portals. And I wanted to try to separate some concepts and some ideas first. And then after that, I'll present 2 data platforms that are used in many countries in the region, and they're free and open source. And I think that they can be valuable for everyone to know more about them. And of course, we will then discuss some of the results from the Paris 21 and Open Data Watch report specifically for Asia Pacific. And then finally, I'll hand over to the colleagues from Armenia and from Thailand to also share their experience implementing data platforms. So there was a report released early this month by Paris 21, World Bank, and the UNSD. And this sentence here captured my attention right away. And it says that almost 9 in 10 NSOs reported they need to strengthen their online data dissemination platforms and tools, as well as their data visualization and communication capability in the next 3 years. So this shows the importance of this topic for all the NSOs. It's an area where there's a lot of attention and there's a lot of potential in the region. I wanted to make first a distinction. It was already mentioned by Rajiv and Eric, but I wanted to types of digital platforms that normally are deployed for statistics. First, there is something called data warehouse, which normally is a repository of data where you integrate data from different sources. And that sometimes can be use tools like SQL, like a database, or even a statistics platform like Dotstat suite. So from the data warehouse, we normally extract the data that actually goes public in these data portals. And here the data portals, as explained in the report as well, they're web-based and interactive data and metadata platforms. And for example, we have, again, Dotstat suite. We also have DevInfo that many of you are familiar with that was used during the MDGs. And we have something called OpenSTG, which is a data portal for the SDGs. And finally, we have data analysis tools that they're not really platforms for data dissemination, but rather they analyze data and they provide certain insights. Some of you are familiar with Tableau dashboards, and some of you also may know ESCAP tool called National SDG Tracker that measures the SDG progress based on the SDG data and produces dashboards and graphs based on that. So today we will focus on the data portals. And there are different types of data portals. Some of them are designed for statistical data or indicators. As Eric said in the beginning, These are the ones that were in the scope of this exercise. But we also know there are portals that are focused on geospatial, and also there are others that they're more specialized in microdata. Also, here there's some examples of them. Again, we have Dotstat Suite, OpenSTG, and DevInfo under the statistical data indicators. And then you're familiar with ArcGIS. It's a famous one for geospatial data, and PopGIS. And for microdata, we have the World Bank NADA and also Dotstat Suite. Of course, there are more tools and more platforms, but these are just a few examples that people might be familiar with. Now, we also have data portals that are specific by scope. Some are very generic, but some are very thematic. For example, you might be familiar with generic data portals, but thematic ones, for example, we have the OpenSTG, which actually was designed for STG data, while there is something called CountryStat that was made by FAO for agriculture statistics. Now, when you look at all of these, we realize that actually all of these different tools, they can work together. And it doesn't mean that having one, you don't need to have another. If you implement one data portal, it doesn't mean that you don't need to have a geospatial portal. Sometimes you may need more than one solution to cover all these different types of data dissemination. Finally, I give here an example. By no means this is a recommendation, but rather this is the idea that we need to think of these different pieces as different pieces of a puzzle that we can build in phases. So perhaps a country may decide to first start with a data portal and publish a new dissemination data portal. And after that, they may decide then to do some analysis and create dashboards, perhaps using ESCAP's National SDG Tracker, or perhaps using dashboards from different tools. And then finally, to support all of these, they may also want to implement a data warehouse that can automate the dissemination of data or can automate the integration of data. And finally, there might also be a need to implement a microdata portal. Again, this is not a recommendation on the phases that you should implement, but rather the idea that things should be planned as a roadmap that you perhaps will want to implement within 1 year, within 2 or 3 years, so that you have a plan on how to enhance the data dissemination on the web. Now, I wanted to give some examples, as I said, and one of them is Dotstat Suite, which has been mentioned many times and you're probably familiar with. And here you're seeing is the one that is called CamStat by the Cambodia Statistical Office. And it was developed about a few years ago. And using Dotstat, they were able to model their data using STMX format and publish it in a very, very nice and easy way.
We did not cover geospatial.
And they can choose both English and Khmer language. And also in the back end of it, it's also some sort of a data warehouse where you can store the data and the metadata in the SDMX format, which is the standard for data exchange and dissemination. Here, just some highlights of Dotstat. It is, as I said, it complies with SDMX and it provides an API that allows for machine-readable data. It is open source and it's supported by a community of users. This means that there are many other agencies out there that use Dotstat and that contribute towards its development. And this means that it has a very ambitious roadmap, that it is a tool that seems to be expanding and adding more functionality. And it seems like every month there are new versions being released. There is a caveat, though, is that it is a complex platform that needs more IT expertise to install and maintain. But that, of course, is because of the many functionalities and features of the product. I wanted to show you another tool that you might be familiar as well, and I mentioned before, it's called the Open SDG. It's a platform that was developed by the UK and the US governments together with a nonprofit organization. And what you're seeing here is the website of Korea Statistics, and they have used this to communicate their SDGs. With Open SDG, you're basically tied into the SDG kind of classification and hierarchy, like you have the goals, targets, and indicators. So it's perfect for SDG dissemination. It supports a very comprehensive metadata information. So all the details about each indicator can be easily attached to the data series, and it's free and open source. It's very easy to set up and update, and takes also many data formats as inputs. So it's an ideal solution for a very, very quick data portal deployment, and it's very focused on the SDGs. We will hear also about this later from our colleague from Armenia. Finally, I just have a few more minutes. I would like to show the findings of the report from Paris 21 and Open Data Watch for Asia-Pacific. As it was said before, there were 18 countries in Asia-Pacific that were assessed. However, there were 40 that were not assessed yet. And out of those 18 countries, we have seen that most of them use a platform made in-house by the NSO, while others use some of these other tools like PopGIS. There's still some dev info, and there's OpenSDG and Dotstat suite that I mentioned before. There is really good representation in terms of the visualization. There is tables and graphs and charts. There's less of maps and less of scatter plots. In terms of the languages, there are 14 portals with one language, 6 with 2, and only 3 portals with 3 languages. And here's one area that we see could be improved to have more languages available in the especially in the national language of your countries. In terms of user-centered design, there was one interesting finding was that 15 of the data portals had a feedback functionality, while another 8 didn't. And the feedback can be a very important tool to hear from the users, to know how they're using your website, and then you can easily plan how to improve it. Data disaggregation also is a strength of the portals in the region. Almost all the portals supported data disaggregation. And finally, in terms of standardized interfaces, we find here that only 2 websites actually provided APIs so that the data can be consumed in a machine-readable format. And that's one area that really needs more improvement. And even for the ones the 2 that have the API, only 1 has a documentation on how to use the API. And 2 portals, they have the option for a bulk download, which is also very helpful. In terms of metadata, it was mentioned as well that none of the portals in the study met all the elements of metadata, and many of them were missing all of the elements. Some had 1 and some had 2 elements only. So the main takeaways is that we can enhance the data portals in the region, improving the metadata, having APIs, and including feedback mechanisms so that the users can inform how to improve your data portal, and also the language can be also made available in more local languages. I mentioned Dotstat Suite and OpenSDG because they are popular open source solutions, and that we'll hear more today from Thailand and from Armenia. If you like to improve your data dissemination, you should start with planning how you're going to do it. So as I showed the different phases that you can, how you start and what things you want now, what things you can have in the future. And finally, you can count on international support, which there's plenty of support from Paris 21, from ESCAP, from Open Data Watch and others. But the important thing is that the ownership should be of the country. We would like the data portals to be owned by every national statistical office. That's all I had. Thank you very much for your attention. So now, as I said, we will have two presentations from Armenia and from Thailand. And I would like to invite our colleague, Ms. Anahit Saftian from Armenia, and she will talk a little bit about the Open STG and their experience in implementing it. So please, over to you, Anahit.
Good morning, good afternoon, hello everyone. Can you see my presentation?
Okay, thank you. I think we can see now.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much for this opportunity to share with our experience on developing the national reporting platform on SDGs based on open data source. Today I will demonstrate our platform, its features, but before to do this, I would be happy to give you just a short overview. Next, please. To describe the path that we have passed to establish this very important tool for SDGs. Guided by the UNEC Roadmap on statistics for SDGs, it was the first edition. We have published on our website SDG indicators in Excel format. That was the minimum requirement by this roadmap. Then we have studied the US experience in developing the platform for SDGs and their training materials. And in 2017, the similar platform for Armenia was launched. But this platform was giving us only the possibility to display our data in tabular format. Then, thanks to a great support by our US colleagues, we have established contacts with the Center for Open Data Enterprise, and we had a mission by data scientists in Armenia, and the main objectives of his mission were to support us, to input data, and to have the initial setup of our platform. And this took a week. And he also organized basic training for our IT staff. Then on the second stage, we were working on improvement of the platform. We have improved its functionality, data structure, data security, and finally, in 2019, the new platform was launched based on US experience of using open data source. Next, please. Here I would like to mention or highlight the importance of cooperation with developed countries. In our case, it was US, and also the support provided by our development partners. Thanks to a task force that has been established at the national level with members or representatives from all UN agencies, government, and Armstat. And we had regular meetings. We were discussing the issues, concerns, and Armstat was presenting the concrete needs for the support to establish the platform. As a result, the UNFPA country office purchased for us server and IOM funded mission by data scientists. Now about the people involved. First, we have established IT team that has been trained by data scientists in using and managing this platform. And Mr. Brock Fanning from Code, he's still supporting us with different technical issues. And later in 2018, we have established internal task force. Unfortunately, we have no any institutional infrastructure, any unit responsible for SDGs, and we decided to establish task force, and the members of the task force have been trained by IT team to fill in data, and they have been provided with the online access to platform. In the past, the IT team was responsible for data input. Now, members of the group are responsible for this data input. We have representatives from subject matter units responsible for their relevant indicators, and they input data when they become available. Next, please. Who was responsible to decide, or who decided to use Open SDG platform? It was Armstat. We had a lot of discussions what platform to take, and we liked very much the US platform, and we decided to use this model of platform. And why? Because, as I have mentioned, the experience and recommendations behind the teams of US experience, and also the benefits of this platform. The most appealing aspect is the ease of maintenance, high level of control, and country ownership that ensures the sustainability of the system. Also, platform is user-friendly, is flexible. Platform is a new tool for us to increase our leading and coordinating role within the national statistical system. And a platform also shows the commitment of Armstat to open data, to transparency, accountability, that contribute to building public trust. That is very key issue for us as a developing country. We got very positive feedback from different users groups, and last year we have updated our user satisfaction survey questionnaire, and we have incorporated question, what makes statistics valuable to you? And we have piloted this question among different users groups. We covered university, ministry, NGOs, researchers, international agencies, and lady from UNDP Armenia office mentioned that Armstat is one of the first to go partners of data-driven initiatives in Armenia, namely in the public policy sector. And she was highly appreciating the accuracy, reliability of data, and the usability of this data for the monitoring progress towards the implementation SDGs and 2030 agenda. Next, please. Another important reason for these selections to select this model of platform is how to say, the ease to customize. We have customized successfully to our national context, and we prefer to have the goal layout as a two-column target indicator arrangement, and also we wanted to see our national indicators to be distinct from the global indicators. Our national indicators are additional. They are temporary contributions to global indicators, and later on I will show that these indicators, they are displayed on the platform next to global indicators. The platform exists in 3 languages, Armenian, English, and Russian, and hosted on GitHub, and the production environment on a local server. The that we purchased thanks to UNFPA support. Next, please. This is the model of our platform, how it looks. Platform is organized according to each SDG with relevant links and with relevant data and links to associated indicators with that goal. And the menu bar shows the following tabs: reporting status, about guidance and frequently asked questions. The reporting status shows how many data have indicators, how many do not. Again, please click. I need to continue. Next, please. Next. After clicking on the goal of our interest, you can see that the goal page displays targets and indicators associated with that goal. And the national indicators are displayed next to global indicators. After clicking on the desired indicator or indicator of our interest, next please, we can see that our national statistics are shown in graphics and in tables. Also, we can select subcategories. We can select gender. We can select geographic location and age group. Next, please. And also our platform provides two types of metadata: national metadata and global metadata. Next, please. The case study on Armenian Open SDG platform has been developed and added to Open SDG community and published on the website of CODE, this Center for Open Data Enterprise. You can visit and see more details and more detailed information. And to conclude, I will encourage other countries to use this model of platform that really supports us to better meet our users' needs by presenting our data in user-friendly and easily accessible way through the single entry point and to reach all target users. The last one. Thank you very much for your attention. That is from my side.
Thank you so much, Anahit, for your presentation. I found one part very, very interesting about how your NSO collaborated with the partner organizations to implement this, and you received a lot of support, and also that you also had a team that learned how to use it and how to update and how to maintain. So this shows your commitment as well to the platform. So it's that magic that happens when there's a marriage between the support from international community as well as the commitment from your country. And the result was that you increased the role of the NSO in leading and coordinating data dissemination. So excellent. Thank you so much. Now we will move to the presentation from Thailand by Ms. Tawisap Sikwan. She will speak about their experience implementing Dotstat suite.
Good morning, good afternoon, everyone. I would like to start with my great pleasure and honor to take part on the floor of Stats Cafe and to share the NSO experience as well. Thank you, Kundayan and his team for your kind supporting. May I ask my colleagues to share the screen? Okay, I think everybody can see the screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. As the topic, SDMX data portal with Dotstat suite. For the contents, I start with the sharing of why TNSO chose Dotstat suite and the process of implementation. Then I will talk the challenges and the national roadmap in adopting other tools related Dotstat suite and move on to the next step. Why TNSO chose Dotstat suite for SDMX data portal? I would like to share our experience with this tool on behalf of my team. My team consists of statistician and IT person. In 2013, with the UNSD DFID project, TNSO enabled the dissemination of MDGs indicator using SDMX standard. After finishing the project, TNSO continued to work and disseminated some official statistics using SDMX concept and selected the mapping assistant to map between the SDMX ML data structure definition and data files, then disseminated SDMX data set on NSI client. In 2019, Mr. Songpon Maisari, the director of the Government Statistic Information Center under TNSO, he is the key person to drive the statistic sharing hub by using the Stat Suite. Before choosing the Stat Suite, we found many interesting SDMX tools, but we don't know which one is fit for our environment and infrastructure. So we set the online and offline meetings with to consult the experts from OECD, UNICEF, ILO, and ESCAP as well to advise us on the proper solution for the SDMX data portal. We tested many tools. Finally, we chose the Stat Suite because it is an open source tool, so TNSO can own the solution non-commercial and align with GSBPM and SDMX. When our team meets some technical problems, there is a global community to support and share the knowledge. For example, last week, we had the online meeting with Kun Jean Baptiste and Kun Mike from OECD to fix some technical problems about the display Thai language on the Stat Suite. The Stat Suite is the platform that offers an efficient solution for collecting, processing, and disseminating statistical data and enables the data services. As our implementation in 2020, we started the pilot project with the Stat Suite and chose the labor statistics sector to implement. And the one thing that we realized our dataset for exchange should start from the specific need. It means data provider, data consumer, and agency could exit and confirm their needs. After we had a few meetings with the office of the Permanent Secretary, Ministry of Labor, we had a lot of trial and error with the SDMX tools. May I skip some processes? I'm going to tell about only SDMX tools. For creating SDMX structure, we chose SDMX metric generator and fusion registry and kept SDMX artifacts in Thailand fusion registry. For preparing SDMX data file, we took Excel to CSV and Excel Power Query. When we had both SDMX file and SDMX structure, we uploaded them to DLM and export data with the Stat Suite. Now we disseminate the SDMX dataset on the Stat Suite. There were 16 SDMX datasets for SDG and 19 SDMX datasets from 4 statistical sectors: labor, ICT, population, national resources, and environment. For using the Stat Suite. Next slide, please. For using the Stat Suite, we think this platform will be popular for the statistician or developer because it's very easy to export in many format files, such as Excel, CSV, SDMX ML, Open Data API, and flexible pivot table. But we are not sure for policymaker or people because maybe they don't know how to select the dimension of the dataset or how to use a pivot table. And maybe they will get lost from using this tool. However, the Stat Suite has many functionalities to provide user by connecting to Power BI, Microsoft Excel, R programming, and Python. This is very interesting, and we tested to create a dashboard by getting dataset from the Stat Suite and export to Power BI You can see on the right side of the slide that we tested to get data from API query based on SDMX standard from Dotstat suite and disseminated dashboard by Power BI. All of these are our pilot project in 2 years. For our challenges from running the process, may I talk a few because of the short time. The first issue, the government agency basically need to share their data in format Excel or PDF file. It means there are many non-machine readable format files and not ready for exchange. The other one, each government agency created their own code list for using in their function and running for a long time. When we need to revise for common national code list, may take more time for discussing and involving for a number of stakeholders to meet the suitable national code list. For this slide, I would like to tell you about a national roadmap in adopting other tools related to Dotstat suite. In 2019, there was the cabinet resolution of the government data service framework. From the left side, you can see the house with 3 main pillars picture. The 3 pillars are data governance, data catalog, and data exchange. TNSO has to drive the middle pillar, the data exchange, the data catalog. Since 2020, TNSO has supported approximately 200 government agencies in developing their agency data catalogs. And at the same time, we have developed a government data catalog platform for collecting the list of data and metadata from all government agencies. At the end of this year, the central platform for government data catalog and directory services will have occurred and ready for data services in official. This is a Thailand national roadmap for government data catalog by using CCAN OpenD, which is connected and exchange all the list of data and metadata between machine to machine by CCAN API. From this national roadmap, we have set the plan to feed data files from the agency data catalog or government data catalog. Then transform data file to be the SDMX format, upload data and export data set by Dotstat suite. As for the next step, in 2023 or next year, we are going to launch the data integration project consisting of data converter service, data visualization service, and robotic process automation. As the data integration project, the tool will lead to agencies' data files from the agency data catalog or government data catalog platform, and then transform data file to SDMX format file. After that, all of files will be managed by Dotstat suite. And at the end of this flow, there are the dashboard or visualization to present data automatically. In our views, TNSO have to work more with government agencies. We have to support Line Ministry to create the machine readable file and disseminate in their agency data catalog platform. In addition to promote the official statistic exchange according to the SDMX standards for mutual benefits as well. I have come to the end of my presentation. Thank you so much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Kuntawi-sa, for your presentation on your experience with using and implementing Dotstat suite. I find it very interesting how you managed to combine different tools to take care of all the data lifecycle, basically, so that the data comes from the different line ministries and from the different departments inside the NSO, and then they come together into a data warehouse, and from there it's automatically extracted into Dotstat and disseminated in SDMX format, and from there also you're creating now dashboards using Power BI, and all very nicely integrated. So I imagine this was a huge effort, not only from you, but from a big team in the Thai NSO, but I can see it's starting to take a very, very nice shape. So congratulations on that. Before we move to questions and answers, actually, we have some questions for you. So we will send two small polls that we would like to hear about your thoughts. So my colleagues will send now the first question. And if you're connecting through the web, you may need to look at the, okay, it's appearing now. You may need to look at the chat in case you're connecting via the web. So the first question is about which of these tools would you like to know more in an upcoming Stats Café? So you can choose more than one if you like, and you can
role
mention in this poll. You can please write in the text in the chat as well, and we'll take that into account. So I'll give you a few more seconds to choose and to answer the question. Remember, you can choose more than one option if you want. And if you have other platforms that you would like to know more, please write in the chat. I saw that Eric Swanson mentioned NADA for microdata, and that it also can support indicators. So that seems to be an interesting development. Okay, so now let's move on to the next question. So one more poll for you. So are you ready? Okay. So the next one is about which other topic around this would you like to be interested in to hear in a future Stats Café? So these are topics that are kind of related to the topic of data portals, but covering different areas. So here we have SDMX, which was mentioned, the standard for dissemination of data and metadata. We have standards for STG metadata, analysis of data flows within the NSO, so how the data the data progresses from the production into processing and finally into dissemination. How to communicate data, geospatial data portals that we didn't cover today, and microdata as well we didn't cover today. So if you're interested in any of these or more than one of these, please vote. I'll give a few more seconds for you to make up your mind. And this will be really helpful for us because based on that, we will then think about creating some more interesting conversations like this together with our development partners and the country experiences so that we can enhance our knowledge in Asia-Pacific about these topics. So thank you very much. Now, the floor is open for questions. If you do have a question, please post on the chat, and I'll try to call on the participant on the presenters to help answer the questions. Is there any that I missed in the chat that any of the presenters would like to talk about? There was a question on accessibility, right? Maybe Eric, would you like to mention something about that?
You know, not so much directly on accessibility, although obviously that's broadly what we're talking about in these platforms. But I wanted to come back to the issue of data openness. As you know, that's one of our focuses at Open Data Watch, and to emphasize the importance on every platform of having clear terms of use that tell users what they can do with the data. And of course, we advocate open terms of use, such as a Creative Commons license that allows both commercial and non-commercial use and reuse of the data. The problem we found on many platforms is that there are no terms of use posted, which leaves somebody unable to determine whether they have permission to take the data and use it for their own purposes, or whether they have to seek permission for that use, and that's that inhibits the use of data. In effect, it makes data less accessible because there's confusion about what can be done with it. So every place where data appear on your websites and on your data portal,
the whole
of the terms under which the data can be used.
This cycle get video is not working, and maybe I can say a few words while he reconnects on the accessibility side. So we looked at accessibility from a restrictive sense of view, I would say. It was basically the language aspects that we evaluated, and also using Google Lighthouse parameters to access how the website appears to differently abled people. This study is the first study that we know of which was done to assess the data portals based on the guidelines by UNSD. And we do also understand that there could be more rigorous tests that can be run on data portals. But one thing that is very interesting that I want to highlight is that data portals should not be treated as standalone projects, IT projects in national statistical offices. They must be seen as a part of a continuous process, and therefore the focus should not be only to make the data portal look better or accessibility is enhanced, but also the backend process, how the data is modeled for digital environment, how the data flows from processing to dissemination, and all these steps. But otherwise, the study can also be deepened in other areas. Thanks.
Yeah, I think that's a very good point, Rajiv, and I think it was illustrated well in the presentation from Thailand to see the sequence of steps needed to populate the data for the data portal.
Yes, thank you. I hope you can see me again. I had some trouble with my internet. So
you're back.
Yeah, I'm back now. So I don't see any other question in the chat. There were some questions that were sent beforehand, and I wonder if you'd like to just take a few more minutes to discuss. I know we are a bit over time, but there were actually a few questions about around the idea of social media and how to reach more people beyond our base customers, let's say, you know, policymakers and those that are more engaged with the data. How could data portals serve as a platform to reach this wider community? Anyone would like to take a stab on this one?
Well, I think that social media certainly have a role to play, and one of them is clearly to inform users, potential users, of the availability of data and updates. It's very important to keep people apprised of new releases of data or new uses of the data. I think that having on the platform itself good methods for data visualization and is another way in which you can encourage use by just explaining what do these data mean, what information is there, and then encouraging people to take the data and use them themselves. Writing blogs and other kinds of informative uses of the data is another step beyond that, again, to encourage people to make use of the data that are available, or to give them examples of how the data can be used.
Thanks, Eric. Yes, I see a lot of countries use sometimes Twitter and Facebook to actually communicate data in a very nice and easy format, but that links into their data platform where people can then browse and see for themselves more. But of course, there's also a big topic on data literacy and how to help people understand better statistical data. And I think that has received a bigger boost now with the pandemic, which perhaps has been a silver lining of this.
Mm-hmm. And you know, one of our recommendations was, of course, the back to basics approach, and in that we say, well, APIs are a more advanced tool, and you should first get the basic data.
Then results into data production.
But I will say, apropos of social media and so forth, that having a functional API and, of course, having it well documented so that users can access it and make use of it is a way then to spread the data out further, because people use the API to populate their own websites and blogs and reports. And so, again, facilitating access becomes a way to increasing data use.
Yeah, I mean, the single version of truth, as they say it, must be maintained before you link it with other channels of dissemination. And that's important to achieve through such back-end integrated data portals. I see a question about Dotstat suite data dictionary in the chat. And I think, yes, Rashmi, that's true. It's called code lists. There are methods by which different standardizations can be achieved in Dotstat suite.
Yes, I see from the poll that there is interest in learning more about Dotstat suite. We had 33 responses on that. So perhaps I think our next session will probably cover more details of Dotstat suite, although we might be open for discussing other platforms as well. So if there's no other question, I think we will end for now. And I'd like to give a big thanks to Rajiv, to Eric, to Anahit and Tawisap for presenting their experiences, and to all the participants who shared their views and asked their questions. And I think that I wanted to leave with a message that that ESCAP is here to support every country in the region that would like to improve their data portals or even create their first data portal. And it's something that, in my personal view, it's my dream that every country has a very beautiful and very accessible and very modern data portal that can disseminate all their statistical data. And I hope to see that in the very near future. So thank you, everyone. And I hope to see you again in the next Stats Café.
Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you very much.